Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Exceptional Conservative Show, live from the nation's capital. Tonight we have with us a very special guest, John Guandolo, who is the founder of Understanding the Threat. John, as we approach the holiday season, most people would say, Ken McClinton, why? Why in the world are you talking about jihadism? Listen, it's Hanukkah, it's Christmas. They even have a holiday for the Muslims. Um, why are we focused at a time of peace on the violence that comes with jihadism?
Well, that's a mighty big question. So let me try to tackle it a couple pieces at a time. First of all, we've got so your audience understands how we frame this entire war. The model, the warfare, the military warfare model that we use is the political warfare model. And political warfare is a form of warfare. It has nothing to do with political parties, Democrats, Republicans. It's a form of total societal, cultural warfare. And the main mechanism in political warfare is the covert state, or the counter state is the term of art in military parlance. And in the United States today, we not only have the Islamic counter state, we have a Marxist counter state. And in that counter state, you've got leadership, you've got organizations. In both cases, the Marxists and the Islamic, thousands of organizations inside the United States. You have doctrine for the Islamic counter state, Sharia, Islamic law for the Marxism, and the socialism and communism that comes with it. They're both well funded, and they both have long-term strategic plans and lines of operations to achieve those plans. You're seeing play out today in the U.S. House of Representatives. One of the tips of the Marxist counter state, the National Democrat Party, which is going after this. What we're seeing is a coup against the President of the United States, an organized, intentional coup against the President of the United States. But on the Islamic side, you've got the government of Turkey that has now taken control of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, which was primarily led by the Hamas wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have, over the last 1+ years, taken the reins, and they now have built diyanets and other Islamic centers on the East Coast that are basically their fortresses, their headquarters, their command and control centers. And this is all in advance of the announcement of the caliphate, where it's our estimation that the president of Turkey, Erdogan, will be named the new caliph. And for years, the Islamic movement has been giving classes around the United States and in North America, and by the way, in Europe as well, on the coming caliphate, but especially here in the United States. The caliphate, when it was dissolved in the early 1920s, was centered, the Ottoman Empire, centered in Turkey. And that's where it will return. And our estimation is Erdogan will be the caliph. Now, what's interesting is over the last several years, President Erdogan has come to New York, met privately with the leadership of the U.S. Islamic movement, the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood. And then these leaders have gone and met with our senior leaders in the U.S. government, to include just a few months ago, Osama Jamal, the leader of the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, and the leader of the Islamic Society of North America, or one of the directors, going into the White House at the Faith and Security Summit, and where the vice president was speaking. So this is what I want your viewers to understand is the war in which we're engaged, primarily 85% or so, is being fought in the nonviolent realm. The primary lines of action, lines of operation, are nonviolent. It's espionage, counterintelligence, propaganda, subversion, and these kinds of political actions, like an unconstitutional, unlawful impeachment process, that the founders warned us about in the Federalist Papers. And so that this is where we are. The great danger, and this will be my last point to kind of clear up this, is that
Yeah.
the Marxist counter state and the Islamic counter state are working together at the local, state, and national level inside the United States at the ground level. So you've got Communist Party USA, Freedom Road socialist organizations. You've got those kinds of group, Code Pink, Answer, working with Answer, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, these groups. So you've got the violent, the nonviolent, the jihadi, Marxist organizations working together at the ground level. And primarily, these Marxist organizations are working with Hamas, which is the leading edge of the Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S.
Now, I wrote recently that we lost the war against socialism under Barack Obama, and we are in the process of becoming a socialized state, or at least the refutation of that is taking place politically, but the foundations have already been laid. The biggest war that we have now against two parties, and that would be communism and Islam. And while we have a soft coup going on Capitol Hill, you have individual groups like the Black Hebrew Israelites. You have the jihadis that have actual training camps in West Virginia, in Arizona, in Alabama. And there doesn't appear to be any attempt to stop any of this. At least that's the way a lot of us as conservatives are feeling. And then we're being marginalized because we want to make certain that we have the Second Amendment enforced to protect ourselves. Where are we right now in terms of the threat of violent actions against Americans from those who have been radicalized?
Okay, so there were a lot of pieces to your question. That's a
Yep.
great question, and the way you asked it was good, but there are at least three big pieces to that. So I'd like to address each.
Go right.
So, in advance, when the caliphate is announced, and it could be anywhere from tomorrow, but I don't think it'll be tomorrow, but in the next few months to maybe the next 12 to 18 months when they'll announce the caliphate, could be. I know my own personal belief is I think it's going to be within less than 12 months, but it could be more than. It's not, the timing is not relevant because the Islamic movement moves based on milestones that it sets for itself, and once they reach a certain point, then they go to the next point. In Europe, what you will see when the caliphate is announced is you will see the armies of Muhammad overtaking countries. Now, we've assessed that a number of countries are in grave peril of already being lost without any shots being fired. Sweden, the Netherlands, certainly France is in danger.
Yes.
You could say Germany, but Germany has a historical, a real history of kind of turning on a dime. But countries like Spain and others are in trouble. But
Yes.
certainly the Netherlands, Sweden, France are in trouble. The UK, I would say, is it's going to take massive events, on the part of the UK government to actually turn their situation around. So that, let me look now. In the United States, the Marxist counter state is the hammer for the Islamic counter state. So the violence will first come, and it will come preceding the elections here, will first and primarily come from the Marxists, the Antifa, and groups that are currently being formed now. If you remember, the historical model. If we go back to, we can go back to the communists or what the Nazis did, what Adolf Hitler did in Germany, was the brown shirts did all the initial groundwork and the initial violence. And then the black shirts came in and killed them all, the Night of the Long Knives. And they announced, hey, look, we got rid of all the crazies. We got rid of the radicals. But the black shirts, as you know, became the SS.
Yes.
They were a much more hardened professional group of killers. You were
Mm-hmm.
going to see, because we're dealing with Marxists here, you're going to see the same thing. Antifa, while they are violent and while they're advancing their techniques, and we know that they met with leaders from ISIS over in Germany, and we have declassified FBI reports about that. And they're looking to get chemical weapons, biological weapons. They're looking to get explosives training to up their game here. We're still dealing with the individual Antifa participant is a punk. And when met with real force, we've seen what happens. Those videos are readily available. You punch one of them in the head, and they start crying to you about why you hit them.
Sure.
But there is a much more hardened group of people that
Yeah.
will emerge out of this, that will be much more serious and much more hardened in their violent approach. But again, the Marxists are the leading edge of the violence for the Islamic movement, the Islamic counterstate. Here's the issue, and the big issue for conservatives like you and your viewers. The GOP is the linchpin that is holding this together. For years, the GOP has kept their mouths shut. They won't speak truth about Islam. They won't speak truth about their Democrat colleagues who are Marxists. Trevor Loudon, who has done tremendous work in this area, did a report of the 50 most easily identifiable Marxists in the U.S. House of Representatives, and all 50 just happen to be Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally lines out the links to the Communist Party USA, to Democrat Socialists of America, to foreign communist leaders who have with these members of Congress and other such information, such evidence. You've got a massive issue here. So the point is the GOP, with the exception of the president and now the attorney general, who just recently explained that what you're seeing by the Democrats is not just political circus. This is intentional. This has a purpose to it, and the purpose is to destroy our government. Both the Marxist counterstate and the Islamic, their objective down the U.S. government. Both want to replace it with something different, and the Islamic counterstate will work with Marxists to advance the cause. Now, when the end game comes, of course, they'll slaughter them just like they will their other opponents. But for now, they're advanced, and the Marxists are, think that they're going to have the upper hand.
We have the useful idiots on Capitol Hill and throughout America that are the snowflakes, the activists. They are useful idiots. The LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ and the P group, the alphabet people. They're useful idiots. But the real warriors here are the jihadists. They have a bigger cause and a bigger interest than merely trying to do an economic, political overthrow of a country. What is the objective of jihadists?
So the stated purpose of Islam, which they teach, by the way, in first grade textbooks all over the United States, North America,
Wow.
Europe, Asia, and it forms with Islamic doctrine. The stated purpose of Islam is to impose a lot of violence, Sharia, on the whole earth. That's it. And the vehicle to do is jihad. And jihad is only defined in Islamic law as warfare against non-Muslims. So the stated purpose of Islam is to impose Sharia on the earth by all means necessary. And unlike the 1600s, when we last battled Islam at the gates of Vienna, September 11th, 1683, as the West, of course, the United States, the first war America fought after the American Revolution was against the Muslims, the Islamic states, the Barbary states. The point is, back then, when they would come, the Islamic armies would come into your town, people that thought Islam was sweet and gentle learned very quickly it was not, because they paid the price at the end of the sword. In the 20th and the 21st century, certainly the end of the 20th and now into the 21st century, what we know is that the global Islamic movement's primary lines of operation are nonviolent. They wear suits, they act very friendly, they show up as patriots of the public, tell you how great they are, how much they love America, when in actuality, dealing with is simply suit-wearing jihadis who are coming at you much more sophisticated level. And the problem is Republicans and Democrats alike are buying off on this.
Exactly. The Republicans are doing it because, well, it makes them look bipartisan. It makes them look happy and appealing. The Democrats are doing it because they want to overthrow, and that these would be the renegades that will help us in that process of overthrowing. What they fail to realize is that those renegades, those jihadis, will destroy them in the end. Abraham Lincoln clearly stated that the biggest threat that we have is not external, it's internal. So, in regards to the threat at hand, there is a question as to why you have a governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia that wishes to disarm Americans. How does the objective of gun control impact jihadis here?
Well, I mean, you can go back historically. I'm sure you're familiar with, considerations Janis took during World War II when they planned the attack on Pearl Harbor. We now know a consideration put on the table to invade California. And one of the factors that made them disregard that option was the fact that Americans are armed, and in good number we're armed. And the right to defend oneself doesn't come from anywhere except from God. The right to defend oneself is an inalienable right. And the founders understood that. The federal courts, including the Supreme Court, understands that in all of their rulings with regards to the right to keep and bear arms. We are created according to our founders, and I believe this to be true. We're created in the image of God. Therefore, we don't have a right only to protect our lives. We have a duty to protect our lives, and therefore we have a right to bear the tools to do so. The Second Amendment merely restates that fact, and that we have an unalienable right to keep and bear arms. So it's very important to remember that. Now, how this works into the movement is, well, for the Marxists and for the jihadis to have as the old saying go, an unarmed populace is an enslaved populace, or will be an enslaved populace. This measure in Virginia will be met by the people of Virginia with all means necessary, including using violence to defend their rights. And violence to defend your inalienable rights, is just.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
what this governor is proposing is unjust, it's criminal, certainly unconstitutional. It violates the natural law for an individual to protect and defend themselves.
John, you were one of the foremost authors of the objectives that the Department of Justice should undertake in terms of dealing with Islam in America. But at this time of the year, there are people who are sitting back and saying, peace, peace, peace. All about us is peace. Let us be good hearted to one another. In question here, when it comes to the idea of best practices, what would be some of the things that you would recommend? Well, before I even ask that question, is Islam a religion, or is it a socio-economic political cult with a desire to overtake the world?
So when we define terms or things like Islam, I always use the terms that Islam uses, that doctrinal Islam uses. Islam defines itself as a complete way of life, social, cultural, military, political, and religious, all governed by Allah's divine law. Allah's divine law, Sharia, real law. It's like U.S. federal code. And there are books of Islamic law that can be purchased in mosques all over the United States in English, and they're used uh, inside the Muslim community. And so this is important to understand. That's how Islam defines itself. That's what they teach. The
Mm-hmm.
most widely used textbook in U.S. Islamic schools, junior high schools for 12-year-olds, literally says on page 2, Islam is not a religion, however, but a complete way of life. That's what they say. That book also teaches 12-year-old, 11-year-old children that jihad is one of the 3 duties that every Muslim must participate in. And it defines jihad as physically confronting evil and wrongdoing. And it says those who die in jihad automatically go to paradise. It
Mm-hmm.
teaches that the law of the land is the Sharia of Allah, that it comes from the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad, who waged war against non-Muslims from 622 AD until his death in 632. He commanded his followers to do the same. He tortured people. He beheaded people. He authorized people to be killed for mocking him. He married a 6-year-old, consummated the marriage when she was 9. All of these things are what the example of the most perfect man in Islam did. So, of course, these are perfect things. That's what they teach. So, to get to your answer, what's the road forward when we know that all of the prominent Islamic organizations in the United States are part of a hostile jihadi network? The
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, the Islamic Society of North America, Muslim Advocates, Muslim Public Affairs Council, Council on American Islamic Relations, Muslim American Society, Muslim Student Associations, thousands of organizations, not the least of which are the 3,600 plus mosques in all 50 states, the vast majority of which are hostile to the United States, just based on the doctrine, and based on the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood controls most of them. And the ones that they don't, many of them are controlled by Iran or other hostile entities like the Deobandis, like the shooting in Florida. It came
Yes.
from a Deobandi mosque. So you've got that entire network here. So even if the President of the United States tomorrow declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, my question is now what? How many police are trained in the country? I can tell you, we, understanding the threat, is the only organization in America training police and citizens about this movement and how to respond to it. We're the only ones giving tools to citizens, police, and local leaders to identify these networks and dismantle them at the local level. We're the only organization in America with a track record of success, to including having jihadis booted out of the Trump camp before he took office. But at the local level, we
Mm-hmm.
have had FBI national terrorism task force people, local and state police officers and FBI agents from the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force in our 3-day training program. And at the end of the 3 days, I always ask 2 questions. How many of you knew this before you came in here? And they all said, we've never heard this information. And
Yeah.
how many of you think this is critical to protecting the community? And they all say it absolutely is. Now,
Now,
this
John,
is where we are. Yep.
John, my barber is a Muslim. My uncle is a Muslim. Not literally, but just going to go with these figurative terms. They the whole idea of Islam has been ingrained in our society as a congeal to Christianity. You have black liberation theology where you have preachers that are using the Quran to preach from on Sunday mornings rather than the Bible. Now that they are so entrenched, is there anything that we can do to exact what Thomas Jefferson would require, which is to eliminate the existence of the Muslims in this country and to send them out as India and China and other nations are preparing to do to push them into other areas. Is that reasonable, especially when you have individuals that tell me that we got 30 million people here illegally, but you can't get rid of all of them?
Right. Well, let me start by answering. That's a great question. You are full of great questions this evening.
Thank you.
Um, it's good. Let me first by saying understanding the threat and the strategic stuff that we've put out. And as I don't know whether your audience is aware of this, when I left the Marine Corps and went to the FBI, I put together the first training program in the U.S. government on the things that you and I are talking about. And I conducted that in the summer in August 2006. And in the end of 2008, I got recruited out of the FBI by the Department of Defense. And I worked in a very unique unit at the DoD. Excuse me. And one of the in going around and talking to leaders about the strategic issues as it applies today, the three most important things we have to do is number one, speak truth boldly about these threats, the
Exactly.
Marxist and the Islamic threat. Number two, reaffirm America's founding principles down into the elementary, junior high, and high school level, as well as into the consciousness of the greater American public. And there are a number of ways we can do that. Excuse me.
Bless
And
you.
the third thing, thank you. The third thing that we got to do, to your point, is enforce the law, and citizens have to obey the law. This is very important right now as things begin to disintegrate and degrade, as we're starting to see. I mean, you've got the U.S. House of Representatives unlawfully voting to impeach the president. So you can see that what most people are having trouble with is actually absorbing that all this is really happening in their
Yeah.
lifetime. And the best thing they need to do is believe what you're seeing, trust your instincts, and get into action. Now, let me say this. Again, organization understanding the threat. What we do is we come into your community when asked. We will train citizens, give them tools, show them how to organize themselves to actually begin pushing back against the Marxist and Islamic networks at the local level.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and let me just tell you a quick 15-second story. When I was working at DoD, the guys who I was working for at DoD brought me in to very senior military guys at the Pentagon, literally just four guys. And I laid this out for them. I laid out the network here in the U.S., showed them what was going on, and they looked at it and they said, well, this is an insurgency here in the United States. And I said, yes, sir, it absolutely is. Now, because it's an insurgency, or certainly that's a good way to lay this out.
Yeah.
In a insurgency, the tip of the spear is at the local level. Local citizens, local police, taking bad guys, identifying them in the local community, and using all legal means to dismantle those networks, extricate them from the community, and get them out. Now, to your point, at the federal level, yes, there are things the federal government can do. Right now, the federal government, nearly in every sector, CIA, DHS, FBI, they are catastrophically broken.
Yes.
They're not fulfilling their oaths of office. The president, the attorney general, in my mind, seem to be two of the only people in Washington, D.C. that understand the depth. Does that make sense?
No, it makes all the sense in the world. I'm going to run out of. I've gone over in terms of talking with you. You could tell how interested I am in this particular issue because you have soundly connected all the dots that other people have just put the dots up on the board. That we are in the midst of a soft coup, which is the beginning of a hard revolutionary fight against American people here in the United States with a Marxist state and an Islamic state. But I wanted to ask you real quick because I only got like 2 minutes, and then I want to give you the time to talk about your organization. But well, actually, 1 minute on this. The left is using gangs. This is just my presumption. You can tell me otherwise. The left is using gangs in the criminal justice system to exhaust the expectations of Americans and to actually get them to a point where they will accept terrorism in their communities. Am I right about this?
Well, certainly the Marxist Party of the United States, also known as the National Democrat Party, the DNC, clearly has had decades of coddling criminals, softening the judicial system, creating, as people who I think articulate it better than I, a real class warfare in this country,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping certain sectors of our population enslaved by keeping them on subsidy programs fostered by the Democrat Party at the federal level. Is so what you're talking about is merely one layer of that,
Mm-hmm.
and of course each of these things goes to destroy what the Quranic concept of war, an official doctrinal book on the Islamic side, says their main aim is to destroy our faith, not just our faith, like our religious faith, our faith in our system, our faith in our leaders, our faith in that there is any hope, and eventually our faith that God's going to save us so we might, in the case of Islam, turn somewhere else. And I would argue the Marxists and the jihadis have gotten us to a point where many Americans feel they have no faith in the system, no faith in the government, no faith in the leadership. And yes, the decay inside our cities is the intentional outcome of the Marxist movement, and the Democrats have played a huge part
Which
in
is
those
why,
policies and those broad.
tonight Americans should be so aware. I mean, they use the phrase "you need to be woke." This is that moment of being woke, where your government is actually fighting you and hoping that you will not fight back. Listen, John Guandolo has put this eloquently well together. He's put the map out for us to understand. While I've been hitting and kind of missing along the way, he's already drawn the map and shown us exactly what's taking place. He has an organization called Understanding the Threat. It is no longer time for us to sit around and wait for someone on Capitol Hill or someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or the White House to do something that we need to prepare and do for ourselves. This won't be the last time we have John Guandolo on our program. I'm going to try to get him back early next year. But you are sounding an alarm tonight. And I want to close with this: the importance of the impeachment. Why is that a mark for both the Marxist state and the Islamic state at this point?
Because they're both working together to remove this president from office in a clearly treasonous manner.
Mm-hmm.
And we are very fortunate that we have an attorney general who, as I said earlier, understands this. And I believe come the spring or early summer, you're going to see indictments of household names.
Will there be hangings? No, you don't have to answer that. Treason should be addressed in that particular concern. John Guandolo, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We look forward to having you back in early January to talk about these particular things and to prepare the American people for what's to come. You can go to your website, which is understandingthethreat.com, understandingthethreat.com. And we thank you and we wish you the heartiest Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
Thank you very much. And I encourage all your viewers, if you go to our website, which I encourage you, if you do one thing, go to the website, understandthreat.com, sign up for the newsletter, and it connects you with all the ways that we're connected. We have a radio show, a TV show, and twice a week we have interactive online programs. Our articles, all of our resources are there for you. If you're looking for Christmas gifts, go to our stores, our store online. You'll see a lot of stuff there. Thank you for having me on. God bless you and all your viewers. Merry Christmas to you, and join us at Understand the Threat, because we are taking the fight to the enemy and putting freedom back on the offensive where it belongs.
Exactly. John, thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you in the new year.
Thanks. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Guandolo with us tonight. People say, Ken, why do you stop at this point? Man, you're on a roll here. We were learning something here, man, and now you're stopping. Well, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the kids. You need to know where your children are, and your children need to know where you are.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?